Hi, my name is David Ross, and this is my video on how I cured my panic attacks. At first, I wanted to start with basically what is my story, and more importantly, why am I telling my story? Well, I've been actually doing a couple of, I guess you could call them lectures on my experiences with panic attacks, and I did one recently at a seminar, and some folks suggested that I take the time to make a video of it and put it on the internet because it could probably help a lot more people. How did my panic attack start? I think it's everybody's story is a little bit different as to how their panic attack started. I've spoken to a lot of people who've had them. Mine started actually giving a speech at work. I was it was kind of a big deal. I was selected to give a speech to a bunch of bankers from across the United States, and I'd given many speeches before and never great at it, but never had a problem doing it. And I found that when I got up there, all of a sudden I started to get extremely nervous, and my voice started to tremble, and I started sweating, and I started speaking unbelievably fast. I mean, I was just rambling on and on and on. And the worst part of it was I just couldn't, I felt like I couldn't breathe, and more importantly, I just couldn't catch my breath. I felt like I had run, 10 miles in 10 minutes. And just an overwhelming feeling of just wanting to run away. I wanted so badly to just run out of the room and just run out of the building and go home and crawl up in my bed and die of humility, basically, or of humiliation. And it was honestly the worst professional experience of my life ever. So what happened next? Really, at first, nothing. It seemed like an isolated incident. I shied away from any kind of public speaking at work. I got past the fact that I kind of embarrassed myself in front of my colleagues and my coworkers. But then all of a sudden, I started to have what I refer to as kind of mini panic attacks. And basically, anytime I had to speak in front of anyone, any group of people, not necessarily giving a presentation, just any kind of speaking, I found myself getting nervous. At my children's school during career day, I had a panic attack talking about what I did for a living. At church during a marriage encounter group that my wife and I went to, I had a panic attack. Social functions, I wouldn't consider myself overly social, but certainly, my wife and I enjoyed mingling with other couples, and I found myself when I was in a group of people, I would just completely clam up, whereas I used to, make jokes and kid around and say things like that. And mostly meetings at work. I mean, I would be in a meeting at work where I had to introduce myself. We'd go around the room introducing ourselves, and I would literally be having a panic attack waiting for my turn to introduce myself, which should take about 10 seconds, and I'd literally be having a panic attack about that. And finally, the worst part of it was I had to give up a promotion I had been working towards for many, many years. And when my boss came to me with the promotion, I turned it down. I gave some really lame reason for why I gave up the promotion, but the reality was the job entailed getting up and speaking in front of large groups of people, mostly your employees, and I was just terrified to do it and make a fool of myself again. So what did I do about it, right? Well, I think like most people, the first thing I did is I went to a doctor who wanted to prescribe antidepressants. And I'm not saying that medication doesn't work for people. It didn't work. That whole concept didn't work for me for a few reasons. One, I wasn't depressed. I certainly had a problem, and I was probably getting a little bit depressed because I spent so much time worrying about panic attacks, but the panic attacks weren't caused because I was depressed. Secondly, in my specific situation, I can't take drugs. I have heart condition, a hereditary heart condition. It just prohibits me from taking any kind of drugs. Things mingle badly with my heart medication, and honestly, I felt like drugs were just going to mask the problem. I wanted a long term solution, not a quick fix. I felt like if I went on drugs, I'd be spending all my time worrying about when it was time to go off the antidepressants, was I just going to go back to having the panic attacks again? And I can almost guarantee you that I would. So basically, what happened to me, I lived with panic attacks for 5 years. For 5 years of my life, I avoided public speaking, avoided any kind of speaking in front of any group of people, probably of three or more, and kind of crippled my personal life, my professional life, even my life with my children. So obviously, there's a moral to this story. I eventually solved my panic attack problem. So how did I solve my problem? Well, basically, my best friend in the world, who I've been friends with my whole life, almost 40 years, told me about a website called Panic Anxiety Treatment. And if you look at the bottom of their screen here, you'll see it's www.panicanxietytreatment.com, and it keeps blinking to visit the website. And it was, you know what, it was a revelation for me, finally a solution. It was a very simple, very painless process, no pain whatsoever. It had been tested by over 27,000 people, so it had great notoriety, respect, and results. And the big thing for me was all natural, no drugs involved whatsoever. It's a methodology, it's a practice. It's not a drug related cure. And it absolutely 100% completely cured my panic attacks. And 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 I know your next question is, well, okay, okay, David, you're speaking about the method. Why are you not telling me the method? Well, I'm not going to tell you the specifics of the method for a very simple reason: is one, I'm not a doctor, and I don't want to pretend to be a doctor, and I want to get myself into a situation where people are thinking I'm portraying myself as a doctor. And two, the method works if you follow it step by step, with all of the documentation. So you really need to go and read about it for yourself. And the website's right down here, and you can very quickly get to the information. So, what is my happy ending? And there certainly is one. I've been panic attack free for 18 months now. Surprisingly enough, after going through panic attacks with me for over 5 years, my wife recently had a baby about 6 months ago, and she had some postpartum depression after the baby. And one of the side effects of the postpartum was that she started developing panic attacks. And I was able to share this method with her and share the literature and the documentation with her, and she cured her panic attacks as well and hasn't had one in months. I received two promotions in 12 months. Years of avoiding promotions. I actually was able to put myself back in the fast track for my career, and I got two very nice, lucrative promotions in the last year. I now give speeches about panic attacks, which is, to me, the irony is incredible, right? The thing that started my panic attacks is now something that I get up and talk to people about. And though the irony is incredible, so was the journey. And people kind of laugh when I say this. I say, okay, you had 5 years of panic attacks, 5 years of crippling your personal and professional life, and you still think the journey was incredible. I do, because you know what? During those 5 years, it was terrible, but the fact that I was able to overcome my panic attacks with this method, which basically relies on me to take ownership and to control my panic attacks and eventually cure my panic attacks. I'll tell you what, after having a debilitating illness, I'll call it an illness, for 5 years, the fact that I was able to overcome it myself, that just means that what else could I overcome in life? Probably anything. And really, that's, my presentation is usually much longer than this, but for the purposes of video, it's very short. So thanks for listening to my story, and I'll kind of end with this. If you're having panic attacks, do yourself a favor, please. Take the next step, visit the site. It's right here, www.panicanxietytreatment.com. Sounds just like it's spelled. Visit the site, read the literature, and take the next step to curing your panic attacks. Thanks again.